What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today on the Ryan Kai Show, we're going to be discussing Carmelo Anthony's decision to sign with the Rockets once he's cleared waivers, and we're also going to be discussing some of the moves made in free agency, including Alex Len going to the Hawks on a 2-year deal, Yogi Ferrell signing with the Kings on a 2-year deal, and Bielitsa signing with the Kings on a 2-year deal, both of which having backed out of their previous agreements with other teams. So to start off, Kyle, what are your initial thoughts on the decision to back out that both Yogi Ferrell and Bielitsa made this free agency to sign with the Kings for more money?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think both Yogi Ferrell and Bielitsa backing out of their deals. It's a fairly uncommon thing to see in free agency in the NBA, and the fact that it happened, twice in such a short period of time, and with the same team, I think is a really interesting. I think it's kind of a not that big of a story because these aren't really the top level free agents, and we're kind of at the end of the free agency, excitement period. So it's not really that big.
We say that, but there's still one really big name free agent that has yet to be signed, and Clint Capella for the Rockets, who has kind of been ignored because there have been so many things and it's been such a lull with this contract negotiation. He hasn't really been talked about, but
Yeah, and I think the main reason for that is everyone assumes that the Rockets are gonna put up the money at the end of the day.
and now
to
there's no
sign
one
him.
else you can offer. I mean, there are teams that could offer, but they would have to go into the luxury tax to offer him. And I feel like the Rockets are he's too valuable to the Rockets to not re-sign. And then I think Yogi Ferrell, Bielitsa, and Alex Len are all bargain contracts for these rebuilding teams who have more money and believe these guys could be good contributors for years to come. I am surprised as far as Yogi Ferrell and Bielitsa go that they had already made these agreements with. As far as like Bielitsa, he made an agreement to go overseas. After he made an agreement with 76ers, then he decided to go overseas. Then after that, he decided not to go overseas and signed a longer term deal for more money with the Kings. Now, that is a very uncommon thing to see. The last time we saw something like that was with DeAndre Jordan when he went away from the Mavericks back in the 2000, I think it was 16. So, I mean, it was 2014 when he was up for his contract 4 years ago. So, I mean, it happens, it's just not common. And then not only did it happen once, it happened again with Yogi Ferrell, who decided to back out with his team. I mean, that just tells me either there's something in the Mavericks organization that like they don't trust they don't like how Mavericks negotiate with their players, or maybe that it's more that the Kings just offered so much more money that it was able to convince these lower level guys to sign.
I mean, it's not like it was a whole lot more money when you look at Yogi Ferrell's deal. It was really just a small chunk more. I don't think it was that big a deal. And, I think it's interesting that both these guys backed out of agreements to come and join the same team and the Kings. The Kings seem to have a desire to throw out a little extra money to come get these development players that they feel like they can get. I understand the Kings think that Yogi Ferrell maybe is still a bargain, but I think the rest of the league would probably disagree and say that the Kings overpaid for that contract, considering.
I think Yogi Ferrell's a quality player, though. I think a lot of teams would like him as a backup or something along those lines. I don't think he's a stud or anything like that, but I think he's a quality backup who can keep the pace accelerated on the floor when he's on the floor. So if you like to run a fast offense, I think Yogi Ferrell's a good way to keep the offense moving fast when you take out your starters.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that at the end of the day, when you look at the contract, I think Yogi Ferrell, you're getting him at a price lower than what his value is, but that doesn't mean that you aren't also overpaying, which basically is saying that the market determines how much people are worth, not necessarily their player value. And so a guy like Yogi Ferrell wasn't going to get more than his contract in Dallas from anyone else. So the Kings, if they wanted him, really didn't have to offer him that much more money in order to get him. They could have gotten him at an even lower bargain rate. And so the Kings, I do think, overpaid for him, but at the end of the day, I think you're still getting kind of a steal because he's just worth a lot more to that than that contract in what he gives you.
Yeah, and as far as some of these guys go, I mean, a lot of these rebuilding teams, I mean, I think the agents see the opportunity to kind of milk them for more money. I mean, you can call that overpaying, but it's one of the attributes I think these players look for is the extra chance to get a little bit more extra cash, because once you're out of the league, you're out of the league, and you want to get as much money as you can. But that being said, I think another big component of that decision is the fact that I think there was a lot of pressure on the Mavericks for Yogi's time, because they had just drafted another point guard to come. They already had JJ Barea, and who's a small 6-foot guard, and they had Dennis Smith Jr. So they have a lot of point guards on that roster, and Yogi's not the style player that can play two because he is so small at like 6 foot. So I mean, he was pressed for playing time. Whereas with the Kings, they only have 2 point guards on the roster. De'Aaron Fox, who's probably going to keep the starting job, and then Frank Mason, who has struggled through the last year on his rookie year and kind of struggled through Summer League. So I think they're looking to upgrade and maybe speed up that backcourt in Sacramento. As far as Bjelica goes, I forget his first name. It's like Nemaja Bjelica, Serbian first name, whatever. Really hard to pronounce. But he, I think, wanted financial security and a longer deal. So 3 years, with the third year not being guaranteed, getting paid about $6 million a year. I mean, it's a decent contract for him, and he is a quality player. I mean, he gives the Kings a stretch big, which they need, a stretch four, which they needed. He can also come and play the 3, which is their weakest position. When Jimmy Butler went down with his MCL injury last year, he was the one who came in and started for the Timberwolves, and they did really well with him on the floor. So I mean, both I think are decent players. But none of them are like obviously outstanding like signings. Like it didn't break the internet when they got signed like DeMarcus Cousins or other guys this year.
Yeah, I kind of like Bjelica as a potential project player for the Kings.
He's not really a project player. He's a former EuroLeague MVP in 2015. He's 30. I mean, he's not a project player. If you're 30, you're more of a veteran presence at that point. But he's still young enough to produce quite a bit. So, I don't know. I think he's a good fit for that team, just of what he can give them in versatility and what he can provide them on offense, and he plays pretty good defense. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Bigger news is probably going to be the Carmelo Anthony decision to sign with the Rockets. Though he hasn't officially signed with the Rockets yet, he's pretty much said to everyone in his camp, and the camp fully believes that he's going to be signing about a $2.4 million deal, which I believe is a veteran minimum to go join them. He's going to be getting all the money from his contract from the Hawks, so that's great for Carmelo. I mean, the real question is, does this make the Rockets better or worse? Because Anthony is a good player, and I am an advocate for Anthony not being as bad as people said he was last. Like, I don't understand. He went from going 24 points in New York down to 16. Everyone's like, oh, he's done. Career over. It's time to call it quits. It's like, 1, he just scored 16 points in the season. That's really good. It's like, 2, maybe he just wasn't a good fit there, and that's why there was that little points drop-off. That being said, he had career lows in almost all his statistical categories. He doesn't play defense. He's a ball stopper, so the ball doesn't really move well when he's on the court. I mean, all those things I understand, but I mean, he is a bona fide scorer, and he is I still believe a good player in this league. And I don't know if he replaces the defense that was lost by the Rockets losing Trevor Ariza and Luka Bahamute. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely gives you more scoring ability, but I don't know if that's necessarily what you need when you're talking about the Rockets, who are one of the best offenses in the league. I just don't know. Like, part of me is hoping that Melo backs out of his deal and ends up somewhere else. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, where else would be a better deal for him? Better situation for him? I mean, he's
maybe
great friends with Chris Paul, so that is a very appealing situation. You're competing for a title. I mean,
I just don't know what he can necessarily add to the Rockets that they absolutely need. But at the same time, I could see the Rockets utilizing him. The thing with Melo is I don't think he definitely doesn't make a team worse unless you as a team allow him to make your team worse. If you give him too much time as a third option the way that OKC did, then he can drag down the team a little bit. But if you turn him into basically like what Memphis did with Vince Carter as he got older, into just basically being a corner three-point shooter, catch-and-shoot guy off the bench, or just, I think Melo's going to come off the bench for Houston.
I don't think so. I think because they lost that forward position, I think what will probably end up happening for Melo is what will end up happening is I see Melo starting for that team, being a third option offensively, and doing well for them. But when it comes to closing situations where they need defensive lockdown, he's going to be off the floor, which it feels weird to say it because, closing, Melo's over his career is one of the best offensive closers that the league had, or has, I should say. But I think his defensive liabilities and how slow he is with his feet, and it's what everyone talks about with Melo is his defense. He's too mellow for defense. It's not his style. But that being said, I think they could bring someone else in who's a better defender to kind of close games, and Melo could sit on the bench now. If he's willing to take that role, I think he could be a solid addition to that team because, the Rockets don't really run traditional teams sometimes. Sometimes they just run the fit a lot of the time.
Right, and that's why I think he'll come off the bench, and I think he'll play with the Chris Paul second unit group. And it'll be him and Chris Paul playing at the same time and not him and Harden playing at the same time in the starting group. And I think that that's basically for a fit reason. And I think that also will allow him to play a little bit more off ball with a better playmaker by his side.
Yeah, and just because he plays in that second unit doesn't mean he's not a starter technically. Because,
right, same thing with Chris Paul.
They never really, after the start of the game and the end of the game, Chris Paul and James Harden would not on the floor at the same time. Usually they ran one or the other, and it worked amazing for them. So
right, and that's what I mean. I don't mean to say that I don't think Carmelo will get starting minutes. I think he'll get good starting minutes. I don't think he'll necessarily be the guy on the court at the beginning of the game alongside James Harden. A lot of the time, I think he'll more likely be starting alongside Chris Paul in that unit. But I think he can be a good player if he kind of just allows himself to fit into this new role. I think part of the problem with Melo last season was that it's a transition in his career from being the guy and being a primary option to
being a third option.
Being more of a role option. And you could still be a high-producing role option, but he's basically going to have to transition at this point in his career to being a role option. And I just don't know if he's really figured out that transition yet. But I think the Rockets are one of the best teams to do it. I trust the coaching staff there.
Yeah, and I don't think the whole thing with D'Antoni, because there was a big story about how D'Antoni and him didn't get along when D'Antoni was coaching in New York, and he cites Carmelo and D'Antoni's disagreement as being a huge role and what that would be. It's one thing to have fights with each other when you're in a losing situation. It's another thing to have fights with each other when you're in a winning situation where you're competing for championships. It's a much better situation they're in now in Houston. That being said, I can see it. This is kind of the transition that he's going to make, and it is hard to put the ego aside and to move forward and to say, hey, championships come first. But I don't know. I feel like the team could make a huge if Melo can just kind of come off the bench more and kind of provide that offensive boom they need from the bench that also Eric Gordon can give them. I think they could be a very interesting team. Now, do they compete with the Warriors? I don't know about that. And if you're not competing for the Warriors, then what's the point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It all depends. At the end of the day, it really depends on a few things with the Rockets. Chris Paul's health is huge when you're talking about competing for a championship against the Warrior and have to fight off the Warriors in the Western Conference and then eventually compete for a championship. Chris Paul's health is the most paramount concern that I would continue to think about if I'm the Rockets. Harden's ability to perform in the playoffs is still, I think, been suspect, even though he had some really good moments this last year.
Yeah,
he also had some bad moments.
I think Harden has proven that he's too hot and cold in the playoffs. He's not consistent in the playoffs.
Now, Carmelo could give you enough scoring to supplement some of those issues.
And who knows if Chris Paul doesn't open up Carmelo's ability to be a better catch-and-shoot player than he was in OKC. And he was a pretty decent catch-and-shoot player in OKC.
So, I don't know. I don't think that they're out of the question from competing with the Warriors. I mean, they did push them to a 7-game series.
Yep, but that was before the boogie, and that was before they've made some decent acquisitions to kind of bolster their roster a little bit more. I mean, adding Jerebko adds another stretch player, which they obviously do really well when they have a stretch player come off the bench, as they did with Maurice Fates when he was with the team.
Right.
And then, I mean, they're probably going to add Jamal Crawford. Like, he hasn't committed anywhere yet, but, like, he said he was interested in joining the Warriors. The Warriors are advocating for him. I could see Jamal Crawford taking, like, a veteran minimum to go play with the Warriors, which would hurt the league because Jamal Crawford has still got a lot of game left. A lot of scoring kick. He's a good shooter. He's a great shooter, I should say, and can still give you a lot of points. He was one of the primary reasons that Timberwolves bench wasn't complete garbage. Primary reason.
A good shooter, great ball handler. He's a really solid player, and I think that would be a great add for the Warriors. Obviously,
nothing's confirmed. Obviously,
right? That would be something that would be tough for the league to swallow, I think. But I think the Rockets have, kept in stride for the most part with what the Warriors have added this offseason.
Well, the biggest things I think they've lost Luke Bahmute, and then they lost Trevor Ariza. And if you think about it, the biggest reason why they were competing last year with the Warriors is that their defense had made a huge improvement. Now, you lost your two best defensive wings, who could also switch down onto 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. So the switchability, the defense, I don't know how you replace that with Melo doesn't fix that. You're still missing that defense. Like, you just add a little bit better offense, but that's not what they need to. That's not what they need to fix.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think we're just going to have to wait and see. I think that it'll be if that series end up happening again next year, I think it'll be an interesting series to watch, and we'll just see if the Rockets' strategy seems to be, a willingness to give up a little bit of team defense in order to go acquire more scoring ability, just in case you have issues like you would have with, James Harden consistency, or having issues with Chris Paul being out and injured. So that may be their strategy going forward, and we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Moving on, I would like to discuss the acquisition of Alex Len by the Hawks. Now, this is, if not an irrelevant story, it's close to one. Alex Len was selected very high, like I think he was either 5 or 6 by the Suns back when he was drafted. And now he's going to go play for the Hawks. Do you see this as a relevant story or not? Do you think this is important to their development as a rebuild team or no?
I've always liked Alex Lem. I think he kind of gets a little bit more flack than maybe he deserves. I understand that he's kind of an outdated player when you look at the league nowadays.
Non-shooting bigs.
Non-shooting big who doesn't really have a physical dominant presence at the post position either. Not really the best post defender. Kind of a finesse large big who can't shoot. And that's kind of a rare thing to see in the league anymore. However, having said that, I like Alex Lem's game. I think that he still has some development to do. I think he still can do some developing. I think that he's not capped out yet, for sure. I don't think it's a brilliant acquisition by the Hawks, but I don't think it's a bad acquisition at all.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for a rebuild team. I think he could help them out, add some depth to that center position that they seem to be lacking. That being said, this is pretty irrelevant in my mind. This is nearly completely not, who cares?
The Hawks have so much that they need to do before they're relevant as a team, and Alex Lem has a lot to do before he's really relevant as a player, and that's just kind of where it is. So, it's just a move. It's just one of those things that happens.
Yeah. The last story I want to get to today is another acquisition that the Lakers made. They signed Michael Beasley. And here, I don't know what to think about the acquisitions that the Lakers have made now. A lot of people have been hating on them because they're like, the proven formula for LeBron to win is to put shooters around him. But I don't think there's any given one formula to a winning team. I don't think the only way LeBron can succeed is with shooters around him. Now, I think it helps when he has that guy when he's just spinning out of control and he can kick out to a guy who can shoot. But I am very interested to see what LeBron would be capable of with guys who can really open up offenses like Rajon Rondo, who's a playmaker savant, who can really unlock offenses, and he can call out defensive schemes before they even call them out themselves. It's ridiculous. Now, he could also come out being a mentor for Lonzo, but I'm very interested to see how playmakers play with LeBron, because Lance Stephenson's also kind of a playmaker. JaVale is just a good rim runner who can also get you some blocks. Not an outstanding signing. Re-signing Caldwell Pope is a good shooter, and I feel like people are not noticing that. He was a really good shooter for the Lakers last year, and he's a great defender, so that's a good signing to re-sign him. Michael Beasley, on the other hand, interesting, because he's a slasher that can shoot relatively well. Did well last season for the Knicks, but not necessarily an elite shooter, I would say, and not really an amazing defender either. So I am interested in all these moves. I think they either are brilliant because you put LeBron in the post more and he does more post-up moves and you have playmakers around him. And that would be very interesting to see what could happen, because, we always think of LeBron with the ball in his hands, but imagine if you just had LeBron cutting to the rim and you had a guy who could just get it to him no matter what. That's an interesting thought to me. Now, I feel like it's going to either go one of two ways. Complete success or utter failure. There's no in between for me. It's I don't feel like they do kind of successful. I think it's either going to bomb or be really successful.
I disagree. I think that the team is just going to muddle through mediocrely.
You think they make the playoffs?
I think they might make the playoffs this year, but I think it'll be as a really low seed and they'll be a one and out team.
Let me ask you this: the Lakers have a better team than the Cavs last year, yes or no?
No.
You don't think they have a better team than the Cavs last year?
Not right now.
What additions? Who is this? Okay. We can disagree on that, because I think they do.
I think you don't have anyone who's near the talent level of Kevin Love
but you have a lot of guys
LeBron
who are
James.
a lot better than any other players.
Maybe.
Caldwell Pope's better than any other player besides Kevin Love on that team. Rondo's better than any other player besides Kevin Love on that team. Lance Stephenson's a really good vet, better than most vets they had on that team. JaVale McGee's better than any big they had on that team outside of Kevin Love.
Yeah, I don't...
maybe Tristan
I don't know.
Thompson.
I'd still probably take Tristan Thompson over JaVale McGee.
All I'm saying is I feel like they got a much improved roster, and I think the young talent they have on there is actually good. Brandon Ingram, I think, could be one top. Well, in the future
Maybe.
could be a very good scorer.
I think it's about the same, maybe.
Okay,
but this is also
my
the
point
West.
is he got the 4th seed
In the East.
in the East. I understand that. He could have some problems in the West, but if anyone could will their team into the playoffs, I think LeBron could. I just don't
Maybe
see him.
so. I don't see them being great this year, and I don't see them being horrible, which is kind of what your point was. I think they'll just be kind of mediocre.
Yeah, I will. I think the Lakers are really planning for next year.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think it's
Finally, these guys are
interesting.
signing 1-year deals too.
I think it's interesting you were talking about that. It seems that people think that the winning strategy to put around LeBron is shooters. I think it's interesting that LeBron seems to acquire a lot of older players everywhere he goes. He did this when he went to Miami. He did it when he came back to Cleveland, bringing in a lot of salty older veterans, Channing Frye, Kyle Korver, bringing in these older guys that I think that LeBron really respects basketball IQ and guys that are a little bit
cerebral.
Yeah, the guys that have a high basketball IQ, that have played a while, that are vets, and they have
Just toughness that you need to win
yeah.
championships.
I think that he respects that more than I think he really did. One of the issues he had when he went back to the Cavs was that he felt there wasn't enough of that, and so he tried to bring a lot of that in, and that was some of the issues he had with trying to bring players there.
Too much age is never a good thing.
And that was some of the issues he had with the Cavs as well, was that I think sometimes he brings too much of that in and not enough young talent.
To keep the team quick and fast and tough.
It sounds to me like you think Rondo's going to start. I don't think Rondo starts.
I think it's going to be what Magic came out and says it's going to be a competition. Whoever gets the starting job is going to get the starting job.
Yeah.
Now, I think what that's going to mean is if they're in a playoff position, you get Rondo. If they know they're not going to make the playoffs this year, you do Lonzo.
Yeah, I think Lonzo starts. I mean, Lonzo was starting when Isaiah was there, and Isaiah's a much better point guard.
I think.
But that doesn't seem to matter. They want to give the starting minutes to Lonzo.
I think if you want the team to be the best form of itself, you do Rondo. And the reason I say that is because every team Rondo has been on always unlocks the offense. And he's a good defender. He's a brilliant playmaker. He can unlock the offense and really change that team that when they were playing with Rondo coming off the bench, when they were playing with Etuan Moore at the 2, and they were playing with Drew Holiday playing the 1, and they had Boogie when Boogie was still healthy. Team was slow. They weren't really that good overall as a team. When Boogie went down, they decided to play Rondo at the 1, Drew Holiday at the 2, and then run AD at the 5, and then they did Mirotic at the 4, who's a stretch 4 who can run the floor a little bit more, and it completely changed the dynamic of the team. They became like runners. They were in transition. They were scoring threes. They were scoring with AD, and Rondo would always find AD, and it was a scary combination because Rondo is a phenomenal player when he plays against bigs, when he plays alongside bigs.
Yeah.
And he really unlocked that offense to make it the best form of itself. And I think the same thing happened with the Kings, when Boogie had one of his best years when he was playing with Rondo. Same thing happened with the Celtics, where Rondo unlocks it and makes the team just the best form of itself. I think Rondo has a knack for making the offense or how it runs the best form of itself. And I think he would also be a great mentor for Lonzo, and having that starting role and showing him how it works and how you find these situations, how you look at a defensive scheme and really dismantle it is a gift that I think he could bring to that team. And if their goal is playoffs, which I assume it is with LeBron, even though they're playing for the next few years, they don't want to not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think Rondo's your best bet for that.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see who's starting day one of the regular season. I think that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, all I know is I think the Lakers are punting this year. I mean, they definitely acquired LeBron, but I don't know how many more years they can punt, but they punted this year and saying, hey, next year's the year we go and get our number 2 guy. Whether it's Kawhi, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie. I'm just kidding. That would not happen. I hope, maybe. There are a lot of big names that are going to be available in 2019, so we'll just have to see and look forward to
Thompson.
that. Yeah, Klay Thompson.
Some people have thrown that idea out there. Klay Thompson.
Well, his dad did play for the Lakers.
Going down to play in Los Angeles alongside LeBron. That would be really crazy.
Double-edged sword for the Warriors, because not only would it hurt the Warriors, but it would also help the Lakers. My one thing about that, though, just to finish up about this discussion, is why would... A thing I've been hearing is that if the Warriors win this year, which they probably will, most likely, then why wouldn't they want to go for 4? Do the thing that the Bulls could never do. The thing that hasn't happened since the Celtics. Go for 4 in a row.
Yeah.
That's going to do it today for us, everybody. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And for more content, check out the Ryan Kai Show.